already downloaded those things. And so now you know that today we are going to consider education and health in the economic development. Education and health in the economic development. So we are going to cover several topics. Actually, when we consider education and health, both are related to the human capital development. We need education as well as health to have a very high quality human capital for our country. Not only our country, or everywhere everywhere in this world. Then we are going to identify what is the central role of education and health, and why do we treat the education and health as a joint investment for development. Then when we consider education and health, especially today, we need to consider the child labor and also gender gap, because we know that in most of the cases, women are marginalized. So now you have a better knowledge about the marginalization, because we already discussed about the sustainable development goals day before yesterday. Day before yesterday, we had a discussion about the sustainable development goals. So here we focus only on the gender gap and women marginalization. But you know that when we consider the sustainable development goals, we need to consider inclusive development. Development. That means all the parties we need to consider, no one can be left behind. Then education system and development. Then we are going to roughly identify what are the health measures and distribution of the health facilities. Then how health affect to the productivity and what should be the policy for the development when we consider the health and the productivity. Then it is already we know that for the well-being of the human beings, education is needed, and that will uplift the health condition and well-being of the people. I think you have, yesterday I also participated to your forum, and our sir, Dr. Vijayawardena, highlighted that definitely the expenditures on these aspects, education and health, will be cut in the future, as already decided by the Ranil Wickremesinghe's government. So, as highlighted by many the last night resource persons in your forum, you could be able to identify that the future, in the future, around for 20 years, we are in a very risky, very uncertain, and very turbulent environment. Therefore, as the policy makers of this economy, government servants and the government ministers have to work carefully by handling the available resources in order to mitigate the challenges and issues that we are facing today. So always I took the statements from the Todaros and Smith book. Todaros and Smith book. Here, these are some of the very important statements done by very good leaders or experts in the field of development. So Jim Young Kim, I think he is one of the World Bank president. Yes, a Korean person. He was the World Bank president for several years, and he highlighted to end poverty and boost shared prosperity. Countries need robust, inclusive economic growth, and to drive growth, they need to build human capital through investments in health, education, and social protection for all their citizens. So here you can see that this statement highlights the importance of human capital, and that can be done through the investment in health and education. So when we consider the health and education, according to this statement, we have to consider all the parties or all the economic agents in the economy. That's why it emphasizes the inclusive economic growth. No one can be left behind. No one can be left behind. When we develop the policies for the health and education in order to improve or upgrade the human capital level of the economy, we need to consider all the parties, not only the urban areas, but also the rural areas, people who live in rural areas. We cannot neglect them. We need to consider all the parties. But at present, in Sri Lanka, especially, we can see that when we consider the health systems and the education systems in the very urban areas, they are developed up to a certain standard level. But in the rural areas, sometimes there are no basic requirements. No basic requirements in the health system and the education system. You can understand when you come as an example, you can consider a school in a very rural, remote area and a school in the Colombo city area. But when we are going to achieve the development, we can't do like that. We need to consider all the regions and all the peoples similarly. So as the president of the World Bank, Jim Young Kim emphasized the inclusive economic growth with the proper investment in health and education to upgrade the human capital of a country. Then Gary Becker, he was a Nobel Prize laureate, and he also emphasized the importance of investment in education. Investment in education. My work on human capital began with an effort to calculate both private and social rates of return to men, women, blacks, and other groups from investment in different levels of education. He emphasized the return on education, return from the investment in education. The person may be a man, the person may be a woman, or the person may be a black person, or the person may be a white person, or any other person. And he emphasized the return on human capital development through the education. When we consider the education expenditures of a particular country, we can identify two types of investment: private investment and also public investment. So here, when we consider the investment in education, we need to consider the investment by the individuals as well as by the government. So when we consider the returns from the education investment, we can identify also private and social rates of return. Private and social rates of return. That is, if a person is educated, himself can increase his benefits. He can get a good job and he can get a very good salary. There is a social reputation for him, something like that. That is private return. That is private return. Then social returns are there also. That is, if a person is educated, the society will be a very good place, because normally educated people, when most of the people are educated in that society, there are no thieves, there are no murderers, there are no social issues, because people are educated and they are doing their jobs, and they maintain a particular very good life. Therefore, the social returns are also high. If you consider a region where very educated people are live, and if you consider a region where the very poor, uneducated people live, as an example, if you consider a place like a slum area, that most of the people are not educated. Therefore, there are a lot of thieves, pickpocketing, and everything is there. So, crimes will be increased as a result of if there is no sufficient education for the people. So, crimes will be lowered if the people are well educated. That is the social return. So, this Nobel laureate explained that situation with regard to the investment in education. Then there is a statement from the Mohammed Singh, that is Prime Minister. Once he was a Prime Minister of India, and he says that the slow improvement in the health status of our people has been a matter of great concern. Actually, with compared to the Sri Lanka, sometimes we can see that Indian people are well educated, but because of the huge size of their population, education is not equally distributed. So they need to upgrade their education systems, especially in remote areas. Therefore, this Prime Minister emphasized the lack of education. No, health. No, he emphasized the health, not the education. Health, lack of health. because of the huge size of the population of India, it is very difficult for the government to provide very good health facilities. And also because of the lower level of per capita income of the people in India, those people cannot spend much of money for their health. The low improvement in the health status of our people has been a matter of great concern. So they need to pay much attention on the development of their health system in order to upgrade their human capital. That's why this Mr. Singh emphasized the lack of the development in the health system of India, especially because of the large size of its population. It is very difficult for them to provide health facilities for their people, especially when we consider the India, not like in Sri Lanka, most of the hospitals are private hospitals. Not like in Sri Lanka, there are no many government hospitals. They are very limited. That means government has not allocated a lot of money to maintain the health system of the country. We also go to India because when we sick, our people also go to India because there are a lot of private hospitals. There are a lot of private hospitals. There is no denying the fact that we have not paid adequate attention to this dimension of development thus far. So he emphasized the insufficient attention on the development of the health system, not the education, health system. Actually, when we consider the education levels of the Indian people are quite high. We can see that in the world everywhere. There are Indian scientists, there are Indian engineers, there are Indian doctors, like that. But when we consider the health system of the country, it is not sufficient to provide a better and quality service for their people. That's it. But in Sri Lanka, we know that we have government hospitals everywhere. But nowadays, it is also questionable because most of the doctors leave the country because of this tax problem. Actually, when we consider the education and health, they play a big role in the economic development. Central role of education and health. Because we know that the ultimate objective of the development is to upgrade the lives of the human beings, upgrade the lives of the human being, or increase the standard of living of the human beings, or increase the quality of the life of the people. So how we can neglect the education and health? We know that education and health directly affect to the well-being of the people. Education and health are basic objectives of development. Therefore, we can identify that education and health are basic objectives of development. When you study the Millennium Development Goals and also Sustainable Development Goal, you saw that when we consider those goals, there was much attention on the education and health. So as I mentioned earlier, health is central to well-being and education is essential for a satisfying and rewarding life. Both are fundamental to the broad notion of expanded human capabilities. In order to increase, especially, the productivity of the human beings. Not only education, but also the health is very important. So we can consider human capabilities can be expanded by giving proper attention on the education and health of a particular country, and it lies as the heart of the meaning of development. So when we consider the developing countries, especially, they are lack with technology. They are lack with technology. Therefore, we can identify that education plays a key role in the ability of a developing country to absorb modern technology. Without having a proper education, it is very difficult for us to absorb the modern technology and to develop the capacity for self-sustaining growth and development. Sustaining growth, that means for not suddenly we increase our growth rate or development level, but for a long time period, if we can keep our economic growth and development, that is sustaining growth, sustained growth or sustained development, not sustainable development, sustaining and growth and development, sustaining growth and development. That means if a particular country can maintain its growth rate and development level at a higher level for a long time period, we say that there is a sustained growth and development. So when we consider the developed countries, especially Western European countries, North American countries, and Northeast Asian countries, we can see that they have achieved a sustained growth and sustained development. That's why now they can maintain a better standard of living for their people with the higher per capita income. When we consider the health and education, actually, we can identify that is the two sides of a coin. Two sides of a coin. Health is a prerequisite for increase in productivity. And successful education relies on adequate health as well. The income level is not sufficient to achieve a better education. For that, definitely, we need good health. We can't say from where it starts. First, we should give the priority to health, or we should give the priority to education. We can't identify that. If the people are educated, they will be very healthy. And we can say that if the people are healthy, they will get a proper education. So we can't identify which one start first. But we can identify that when we consider education and health, why most of the international communities give a very considerable attention on these two aspects, because they are vital components of growth and development. They are vital components of growth and development. As inputs to the aggregate production function. In order to increase the aggregate production, we need very quality human capital. We need very quality human capital. How we can maintain a very quality human capital? For that, we need to pay much attention on our education developments and health developments. We can identify these two. They play dual roles as inputs and outputs. So we can identify that the central role of education and health. That's why we consider they are as inputs and outputs. When we consider the changes in the education and health, or evolvements in the education and health, here the data a little bit all, but day before yesterday you show what are the developments in education and health, especially related to the Sri Lankan economy, when we consider the achievements of the Millennium Development Goals, not only for Sri Lanka, but also for the whole world. We can see that from history to today, there is a very considerable development in these two aspects, education and health. So here it emphasized that in 1950s, 280 of every 1,000 children died before their 5th birthday. But last time when we consider the Millennium Development Goals achievements of Sri Lanka, we saw that that rate has been declined to 30 or something. I can't remember the exact number, but you can refer to the day before yesterday lecture note. Both the under 5 mortality rate and the number of under 5 deaths have fallen by more than half since 1990s, especially that the respect for that we have to give to the Millennium Development Goals and to the Sustainable Development Goals. Because when the Millennium Development Goals were set, there was a responsibility for each and every government to achieve those Millennium Development Goals. They work for that. And because of that, they could be able to control the mortality rates. They reduce the mortality rate up to a certain level. And also when we consider the children's death, we can also consider that we can identify that there is a considerable improvement in that aspect also. So here in the last sentence, you can see that progress in reducing child mortality rate has been accelerated in the 2000 period compared with 1990s. With the annual rate of reduction in the global under 5 mortality rate increasing from 1.8% in 1990s to 4% for 2000 to 2009. And again, when we consider the next period, 2010 to 2021, it has been again declined to 2.7%. So when you can consider as examples achievements of the Millennium Development Goals up to year 2015, and after that you can consider what are the achievements of the different countries including Sri Lanka from the Sustainable Development Goals, because those Sustainable Development Goals also consider the health and education. Especially when we consider the education, this is that we need to achieve a universal primary education. Universal primary education. And also, they try to control the diseases. So we can see the achievements of the different countries, including Sri Lanka, related to the Millennium Development Goals and related to the Sustainable Development Goals. Then already you have studied labor economics and human HRM, human resource management. Human resource management. So you know that what is the human capital? What is human capital? That is according to Todaros and Smith's book, human capital means productive investments embodied in human persons, including skills, abilities, ideas, that means idea developments, health and locations, often resulting from expenditures on education, on-the-job training programs, and medical care. So there are 3 measures for us to increase the productivity of the human capital. That is from expenditures on education and on-the-job training. That's why you are going for internships, etc., to increase the productive capacity of the students. On-the-job training programs and medical care. So both are there, education and health. You need to maintain a balanced life. If you pay your time only for the education, you will not have a balanced life. You need to consider your weight, your height, and your health condition, and everything. You have to aware about your health. So here in this figure, you can see that education increase the human capital, and also if there is a very equal education system, women will be empowered. Women will be empowered. And because of the education, productivity of the people will be increased, and there will be a very good society, social development. People are well disciplined. And also, because of the education, the people can get better job opportunities. Therefore, that is a very good poverty reduction method. Actually, when we consider education, for the poor people, most valuable investment to escape from their poverty is the education. Through the education, the whole world can be changed. So when we consider the income level, according to the researchers, it is found that there is no close relationship between the household income and the health and education level of the people. Sometimes some people have a very good high income levels, but they don't spend that much of money for to maintain their health and to get the education. Therefore, we can't concretely say that there is a very close relationship between households' income and the high level of health and higher level of education. But we need to understand that human capital will give a proper direct attention to bring the economies to a higher position. That means in order to increase the economic growth of the country, definitely the policymakers have to pay much attention on the health and education. It definitely will lead to increase the economic growth rates of the country. Human capital must be given direct attention in its own right, even in economies that are growing rapidly. As individuals, also we should try to upgrade our capacities, that means our human capital. For that, there are two tools. One thing is getting a better education. The other thing is maintain a good health. Not only individuals should pay attention on that, but also the governments or the economy should pay attention on that. They need to take different actions to upgrade the education level and the health system of the country in order to achieve a higher growth rate for the economy. So you can see that sometimes you go to the road and you make a rally and you say that increase the GDP share, increase the expenditure on the education. In Sri Lanka, it is a very small amount from our GDP. that is around less than 4%, something like that, spent for the education, that is from the government side. But nowadays we can see that mostly individuals also make a considerable expenditure on education. But yesterday we heard that from our sir, Dr. Vijayawardhana's speech, that the government has already planned to reduce the government expenditures, and therefore definitely they will cut the expenditure on education and health both. So that means government expect that individuals need to spend more money on education and health. If the government reduce their contribution, that means in order to maintain a better situation for our lives, we need to spend our individual money. Even for the poor people, they have to allocate sufficient amount of money for their children's education and for their health. Actually, when we consider the poor situation of the Sri Lankan government, without doing something like that, it is very difficult for them to run this government. Here you can read this. You take your time and read this. Voice of the Poor. I took already those things from the Todaro and Smith's book. So first one emphasize the importance of savings money to maintain a better health. If you don't have money today, your disease will take you to your grave. That means you will die very soon. That means we need to allocate particular amount of money. We need to save particular amount of money to maintain a proper health for us. That means to get the health facilities. We know that Ghana is a developing country in Africa, sub-Saharan African country, because their investment in health is not sufficient. That statement we can identify. They explain their poverty and insufficient income to maintain a better health for them. Then Brazil is not a actually low income country. It is low middle income country. The children keep playing in the sewage. That means most of the places are dirty and poor. Children from the poor families live in mostly in very dirty and in a bad environment. Ecuador, you know that Ecuador is a middle Central American country. In the hospitals, they don't provide good care to the indigenous people like they ought to be because of their illiteracy. They treat them badly. That means the indigenous, there is no fair consideration for the whole people in the Ecuador. That means indigenous people are marginalized. Indigenous people are marginalized. That is because they don't have that much of education, illiteracy. They don't have sufficient literacy. Therefore, they are marginalized. That next quote also from the Brazil. The school was okay, but now it is in shambles. There are no teachers for weeks. There is no safety and no hygiene. We can see that when we watch the news in Sri Lanka also, same situations. Some people explain same situations in our country also. So we can have say similar statements from our poor people also. Then Pakistan, if parents do not meet these payments, which are as right as 40 to 50 rupees per month, the teachers were reported to beat the students or submit for fail in grade 4 or him. That means if the parents do not have sufficient money to spend the needs in the schools, sometimes teachers give punishment to the pupils, and sometimes the pupils, teachers make the pupils pay. That means for the people who have a better income, then their children don't have any problem, but the people, poor people's children, they have a lot of problems in school. Then Nigeria's, there is a different story. It says that teachers do not go to school except when it is time to receive salaries. When it is close to give the salary, they go to the school, otherwise they don't go to the school. That means totally they have neglected their duties. They just consider their income, but not about the quality of the education. They don't think about the service that they provide, just they think about their salary. That is due to the poverty actually, poverty. Because other days they can do another job and get another income. That's it. Therefore, they don't think about the education of the younger generation of their country. Then from several countries, including Bosnia, before everyone could get health care, but now everyone just prays to God. In Sri Lanka, some incidents happen like that. Some people don't go to get the health facility, just they pray to the God. They don't get sick because everywhere they just ask for money. They pray to the God not to get sick, because in order to get the health facilities, they need to pay money. Previously, that means previously there was a free health system, but after that their health systems are not free. Therefore, now just they pray to the God not to get sick, because now they have to pay for their health services. That means system have been changed. So we can see that there are different types of issues prevail in different countries. When we consider Sri Lanka situation, we can see that all these voices we can hear from Sri Lanka also. Not only one story, we can identify all these type of voices are there when we go to the remote areas of our country. Investment, education and health, joint investment for development. So when we consider the education and health, both are invested in the same individual. As an example, if you consider your parents, you can see that they invest in you to maintain your good health, and also they spend money to provide you a better education. That's why we see that these are investment in the same individual. As an example, you can consider your parents' expenditures on you as the health expenditures as well as the education expenditures. So both affect to the returns of the investment, returns of the investment. Greater health capital may improve the returns to investment in education. If we have a very good, very high level of investment in the health systems, that will improve the returns on investment in education. Returns on investment in education. That means when we have a very healthy, very strong human capital, then definitely their productivity levels are high. Therefore, returns to investment in education is very high. So here you can see some examples. Health is a factor in school attendance. If you get sick frequently, you can't go to the school regular. That's it. For our student also say, always they are sick and they can't come to the class. Very poor attendance. That means they are not in a good health. Health is a factor in attendance, school attendance, university attendance. Healthier students learn more effectively. So those who come to the classes, they learn very effectively. Healthier student also. If you are in a good health, then you can catch anything that your teacher teach you. So healthier students learn more effective. A longer life raises the return to education. How we can have a long life? If we are very healthy, we can have a long life. That is life expectancy. If we can work until year 60, we can get a higher return for our education. But if we die suddenly on year 4, when I am old, 40 years or 50 years, something like that, then our returns to investment will be limited to that year. healthier people have lower depreciation of education capital. Healthier people have lower depreciation of education capital. Then when the people are healthy, the depreciation on their human capital is also low. Then other way around also you can see some examples. Other way around, greater education capital may improve the returns to investment in health. In the first one, we consider greater health capital. That means very strong, very healthy human capital, how it affect to the return on education investment. Then here, greater education capital and returns to investment in health. Greater education capital means if the people are well qualified, well educated, have a lot of skills, their attitudes are very developed, something like that. Greater education capital. Their discipline is very well, so it will increase the returns to investment in health. So there are some examples here. Public health programs need knowledge learned in schools. Public health programs need knowledge learned in schools. So that is clear. Then second one, basic hygiene and sanitation may be taught in school. So if we have not gone to the schools, it is very difficult for us to learn about the basic hygiene and sanitation requirements for a better life. Then finally, education is needed in training health personnel. If we don't have an education system, how we can have nurses or doctors or specialists or someone like that? Definitely, there should be a better education system to have trained health personnel, to have a better health personnel. So you can see that education and health, those two can be considered as a joint investment for development. Joint investment for development. That's why always we consider in our development targets education and health. So as the international communities, we can see that when the international United Nations and other multinational organizations set the Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals, they have given a priority for these two aspects. So this is also, we can identify what is the relationship between investment in education and health. So you can go through here by one. Health and education are investment made in the same individual. This is same one. I have used. education and health, why increasing income is not sufficient. As an economy, if we pay our attention only on the increase in the per capita income level of the economy, so when we consider actually income level or per capita income, it is a material thing. It is a material thing. But when we consider the education and health, they are not material. They are some quality aspects. Quality aspects. But the income is a material thing. I have told you that when we consider the development, not only material things, but also immaterial things or quality things, we have to consider non-economic aspects. So especially when we consider the education and health, they are non-economic aspects. But in the world, when we see the situations in the developing countries, especially we can see that education and health are comparatively much higher in high-income countries. Even though we say that education and health are important than the income level of the country. But those two go together. As an example, we can see in the developed countries, for the developed countries, we can identify that education and health are comparatively much higher in high-income countries. That means in the developed countries. So we can see that when we consider those countries, we can see that causality runs in both directions when we consider the education and health with the income level. Education and health from the one side and the income level is from another side. When we consider any individual also, we can see that causality. If the person's income level is high, he can spend more money on education and health. And other way around also. If the person is in good health and very well educated, then his income level will be high. That's why we say that there are good reasons to believe that the causality runs in both directions. Education and health from the one side and from the other side, the income level. So we can consider higher the income individually or as an economy. Higher the income as an individual or as an economy. Higher the income, people and the government can afford to spend more on education and health. It's obvious. But in some occasions for the individuals, we can see that even though their income is high, they don't spend that much money on education and health. Then greater the health and education, higher productivity and incomes are possible. Why do we spend a lot of money for the education? Nowadays, you know that your parents spend a lot of money for your education, even though they cannot afford However, they manage the other things and spend large part of their income for your education. Why? They think that in the future, that will definitely contribute to increase your productivity and thereby your future income. Especially when we consider Japanese economy, Korea, then Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, those countries, they started from that way. They spend lot of money to upgrade their human capital quality. Education and health were given much priority in their development agendas. In many cases, household consumption choices themselves may lead to a surprisingly small link between income and nutrition, especially for children. So when we consider the household income choices, household consumption choices, there is no very strong relationship that with the income level and the nutrition level, especially for the children. It is something very wrong thing. That is because mostly we can see that, especially when we consider the poor economies and also poor families, poor households, we can see that they don't think about the children's nutrition, and also when they select the items for their consumption, they don't think about the nutrition level of their children. Just provide some foods, but it is not a good way to feed their children. Even though their income level is high, sometimes they do not provide proper foods for their children. So their nutrition level is severely affected in the bad way. In the income elasticity of the demand for calories, what is income elasticity of the demand for calories among the low-income people? That means what is the income elasticity of the demand for calories means when their income change, how much they allocate to get calories from that change in income. Income elasticity of the demand for calories means that when you consider the income elasticity of individuals, you know that normally we consider what is the change in their pattern of consumption as a change in their income. So here, income elasticity of demand for calories. If their income level change, especially if their income level increase, how much they spend to increase their consumption of calories. Income elasticity of the demand for calories among low-income people range from near 0 to about 0.5%. That means very insensitive. Income increases, but they don't think about the getting calories. They are neglected that. Very insensitive, 0 to about 0.5. Income is spent on other goods beside foods increase food variety without necessarily increasing the consumption of calories. Actually, we can see that pattern when we consider, especially the poor people, when their income level increase, they just spend that money for many other things, but not to provide good foods for their children. That's why that is the thing that statement explains. These are research findings. Based on the research findings, these things are discussed. Increases in income often do not lead to substantial increase in the children's education and health. That is similar to the getting calories. Income increases, but from that, a substantial portion does not go to the children's education or health. That means people do not consider education and health and the getting calories as one of the important thing to increase the productivity or capacities of their children especially. But when we consider income elasticity of the convenient foods is greater than unit income elasticity of the convenient foods. Convenient foods means that junky foods. They are not very nutritious. But when our income increase, normally we increase the consumption of such foods, convenient foods, not nutritious foods. We spend a lot of money for the snacks, then for the unnecessary foods. They are not healthy foods. But better educated mothers, but the situation can be very or different if the mother is educated. If the mother is educated, the picture will be another picture. The mother is very educated, then it will tend to have their healthier children at any income level, even though the income levels are low. If the mother is very good educated mother, then she will provide very good foods for their children, and that will provide a lot of calories for their children. So their children will be healthy. So here, when we consider the income and the education and health, especially we can see different pictures. And finally, we say that if the mother is educated, even though there is no sufficient income, we can see that they try to give a proper education for their children, and they try to give a very nutritious food for their children. Then here you can see, this is I took from the Todaro and Smith's book, correlation between under 5 mortality and mother's education. Correlation between under 5 mortality and mother's education from different countries, Egypt, Philippines, Bangladesh, Bolivia, Tanzania. So you can see that white color to dark blue, no education, some primary education, complete primary or some secondary education, complete secondary or some higher education. So you can see that if the mothers are highly educated, like here as an example in Philippines, no, in not Philippines, mothers are very low educated in Philippines. Which country mothers are highly educated? Tanzania, Bangladesh. Here in the vertical axis, you can see the country, and here you can see the, vertical axis, you can see the death per 1,000 live births. Death per 1,000 live births. So here we can see that Tanzania, we can see that mostly their mothers are, no, they don't have education. They don't have education. Therefore, 4,000 live births, deaths are more than 150. For the educated mothers, that is around 75. For the Bolivia, no education for the mothers. There are also a lot of education. Mothers are not educated. Therefore, we can identify that more deaths are there. But the situation is different in the same country if the mother is educated. Many here mothers are educated, and because of that, the death per 1,000 live birth has been declined. So we can see a very good situation in Egypt. In Egypt, they are mostly the ladies are educated. Ladies are educated, women are educated. Therefore, we can identify their death per 1,000 live births are small. But when in Philippines, we can see a very different situation. Different situation. There are uneducated women also, and deaths are very high for infant deaths are very high, and also we can see that there are educated mothers when we consider. Among those mothers, the death rate is very low. In Egypt, we can see that, especially actually when we consider the Egypt, there is a very good health system in Egypt. Government provide all the services for the people. Therefore, here especially we can see that even the mothers are not educated. The death rate is comparatively low with other countries, you see. Even among the women who do not have education, you can see that their death rate is low. However, this figure shows that when the education level is high, the death rates are low. That means the mothers or women education is very important in the development, especially in the children's health and in the children's education. Then here, investment in education and health. Investment in education and health. Here we are going to consider the returns to education. We can identify that initial investment in education and health, both are here. We consider investment in education or health and education and health lead to a stream of higher income. That means if we invest in education itself, that will lead to higher income. Or if we invest more money in health itself, it will lead to higher income. And if we invest more money on both, that will lead to higher income. The present discounted value of this stream with compared to the cost of the investment. We need to consider the present discounted value of this stream with compared to the cost of the investment. That means in the future returns, we need to discount the present discounted value of this stream with compared to the cost of the investment. In mathematics also, you discounted the future incomes to get the present value. When we consider the education, in most of the cases, private returns are higher than to the social return. Private returns are higher than to the social returns. That means educated people, if we invest for our education, we can get more benefits. That is private benefit. If we are educated, society will be benefited. Society will be benefited. What this says that? This says that private returns are higher than the social returns in education. Especially at higher education levels. Higher the education level, individuals' private returns are higher than to the social returns. Actually, that mostly that depends on the quality of the people. Quality of the people. Spiritual qualities of people, especially. If a person is highly educated, in most of the cases we can see that he just try to increase his returns only. But indirectly we can identify social returns due to this educated people. There is a very peaceful society, no crimes, no conflicts, something like that. But according to the researchers, it is found that private returns are higher than the social returns. So you can also make your research on that aspect. You can identify what is the social return and what is the private return of a person's education. Here in this equation, we consider the discounted value of the investment in education. E stands for income with education. E stands for income with education for several years. Let's say that a person is educated and he will work for 30 years. Then T is 30. E is for 30 years. E is income with education. N is the income without the extra education. NT is income without the extra education. Without the education, we discounted it using a particular interest rate. Normal returns. interest rate is normally we take as the normal returns on the investment. I is the investment rate. So we can consider the discounted present value of future returns. Then here in labor economics, I think also you study about the what is called that age earning profiles. You can see the topic here. I think you can see it. Finger 8.1, age earning profiles. I am sure that you have learned about this in labor economics. Age earning profiles by level of education. Age earning profiles by level of education. So we can see that with the higher level of education, age earning profile will be increased. So here you can see that the upper wall line, that is for the university education. Then broken line curve is for the secondary education. Then dark color line is for the dark black color line is for the primary education. Then next dotted line, broken line is for the no education. So age earning profile, you can see age start from 10 to here 25, 40, 55, something like that. The growth rate of the age earning profile is very high for the people who are with university education. It is steep. And if you consider the no education age earning profile, it is quite flat. That means with the age, their income level does not increase. But for the people who have a higher education, like university education, when they become old, they can get higher earnings. I think you have learned this concept in labor economics very well. So this shows that the educated people can get higher returns in the future, but for the uneducated people, they cannot increase their income that much in the future, in their old ages especially. Here, this table I took also from the Todaro and Smith's book. So, here you have several groups of countries. Asia, A stand for Asia. There is a superscript. That is A, that means non-OECD Asian countries. Non-OECD Asian countries. Then B, Europe, Middle East, North Africa, and non-OECD countries, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development countries. You know that most of the rich countries are the members of that organization, Organization of Economic Cooperation for Development. Then Latin American and Caribbean countries, OECD countries are also separately there. sub-Saharan African countries and the world averages. Returns on education. You can see that for the higher education, you can see returns on education are very high for the Latin American countries. Social returns are high in Latin American countries. But private returns are very high in sub-Saharan African countries. When we consider the OECD countries, we can see that their returns percentages are even less than the world averages, mostly. They are less than the world averages. So what is the most important implication here? You see, as an example, consider the world values social returns for the primary, qualified with primary education, qualified with secondary education, higher education. Which one is large? Returns to investment on education, primary education is large. You can see that. Private also same way, social returns for the primary educated people are large, and private returns are also large for the primary educated people. For the Asian countries also same, and also for the MENA, that means Europe, Middle East, Europe, same. But in Europe, you can see that private returns are higher for the people with higher educational qualifications. Asia also, no, Asia primary one is large, 20%. And for the OECD and European countries, we can see that private returns for the people who are highly educated is large. In all the other cases, we can see that the private returns are large for the people who are qualified with primary education. So here you can see that the situation. Here you can see the these values are for the Sri Lankan economy. Total expenditure by function in the country for year 2019. Year 2019. So total expenditure by function. You can see that what is the value for health and education. For the health, that is 8%. education 10%. So we can see that there is no large proportion from the total expenditure of the country for education and health. But now this has been further declined, especially for the education. These figures are related to the year 2019. Then this is the situation in year 2022, according to the budget speech. So for the total education budget, the allocated total amount is 37,300 million. 37,300 million total allocation from the budget. Out of that, you can see that most of the large proportion is going to the salaries, and here for the development schools, vocational and technical training, it is 2,000 million. So you can see how this money has been allocated among the different tasks. Now you know that very recently, I think this week, the government decided to cut this amount further, this allocated amount for the education. It is decided to cut further because they are going to reduce the government expenditures. As yesterday Dr. Wijewardena sir highlighted, all the ministers should walk to their offices, but they should not use their vehicles to go to the offices. Especially they don't use their own vehicles. They use the government vehicles, government drivers and government fuels, etc. So first they should cut their expenditures rather than cutting the expenditures for essential services of the country that indeed important for the economic development of the country. But the things not work like that. Things work other way around to get the much benefits for the parliament members especially. Then one of the important issue in the education and health is child labor. Child labor is severely affected the children's education and health. Especially in the developing countries, even not like in Sri Lanka, even in other countries, it is very severe. Child labor is a widespread problem in developing countries. When children under age 15 work, their labor time disrupts their schooling and in the majority of cases prevent them from attending school altogether. Especially this child labor keep the children away from the schools. Child labor keep the children away from the schools. When we consider this child labor, compounding this, that means child labor, the health of child worker is significantly worse. because children have not been grown to work. Therefore, these child workers are significantly, their health conditions are worse. Even accounting for their poverty status than that of children who do not work. Their health condition is worse than the children, those who are not engaged in work. Physical stunning among child labor is very common. So child laborers are mostly victim of many health issues. In addition, many laboring children are subject to especially cruel and exploitative working conditions. They are not provided better and very good work environment, and their work is not a work bearable by them. So very miserable and very poor situation is therefore the child labor. In Sri Lanka, we have a Child Labor Act, and the World Labor Organization, ILO, International Labor Organization, mostly work to avoid this child labor. In Sri Lanka also, it is the law is very strict to the people, those who employ the children for their work. What are the top 3 reasons for schools dropouts among the children? First one is because of they are not good in education, poor educational progress, not willing to attend. Once the children understood that they are not good in education, that is the mostly affected reasons to dropouts among the poor children. Then second one is financial problems. When their parents or themselves cannot get the required things for the schools, their dropouts will be increased. Then for some children, they have to work for their families. That is the third reasons to increase the dropouts from the schools. So according to the Child Labor Survey, 2016 Child Labor Survey shows that what are the proportions of child labor from the total child population. So you can see that here total child population is this much, 45 457 1,442 total child population. Then child labor is 1%. Working children is 2.3%. Then very dangerous, hazardous forms of children labor is around 0.9%. So when we consider the age groups for child labor in Sri Lanka, we can see that mostly 15 to 7 years old children are engaged in work. 3,500, 447. Then 12 to 14, around 500, 5,000. And 5 to 11, you see, 5 to 11, very small children also around 3,000. Then you can see what are the types of work they engage in Sri Lanka. Elementary occupations, then service workers, shops and market sales workers, etc. Plant and machines also they work, craft and related workers, other. So you can see that there is a severe child labor issue in Sri Lanka. When we look at here, especially distribution of child labor by age, you can see that they don't complete, especially their tertiary level education, 15 to 70, 35,447 people, children. That means that is their age. They should go to their A-level classes. Then these are related to the world child labor, world situation. 79 million children are involved in hazardous work. Africa, we can see that the child labor is highest. And Arab states, we can see that in the Middle East countries, because of their laws, I think there are very strong law system in those countries. Punishments are also very severe. Therefore, the child labor is considerably low in Middle East countries. And these are the hazardous work they engage. First one, work that exposes children to physical, psychological, or sexual abuse, especially when they work as a housemaid. Then some children work with substances or dangerous tools. Sometimes we know that they are working in that salt production. In the salt production, they are very dangerous. In isolated island, mostly those industry is doing. So it is very dangerous. And if they work with the fire or if they work with the gas or something like that, it is also very dangerous. Then other three, you can see that manual handling or transport of heavy loads. That means loading and unloading of goods. Loading and unloading of goods. Work that keeps children unreasonably confined. Work with difficult conditions such as working for long hours. So we can see that in the world still there is a considerably higher child labor. That is due to the prevailing poverty status in the world. Prevailing poverty status in the world. You can see that African, Sub-Saharan African region, then Asia and the Pacific, Europe and Central Asia, here Europe especially maybe in Eastern Europe, then Americas, that means maybe Latin American countries, then we can see Middle East countries. So that is the prevailing situation in the child labor of the world. Then child labor policy, and is it possible to ban all types of child labor immediately? It cannot be done because of the mired poverty those children live. They have to work. They have a lot of issues without work. Severely malnourished. They don't have sufficient quality foods. They don't have sufficient money for their schooling. They don't have sufficient foods. They don't have money to buy their foods. And they don't have money to maintain their health. Therefore, they need to work. Then assumptions of child labor. There is a model, multiple equilibrium model. It says that luxury axiom from one side, no child labor due to high income level of the household. Luxury axiom. Multiple equilibrium model. There are two axioms. One is luxury axiom. It says that no child labor due to high income level of the household. Then substitute axiom. It says that adult and child labor substitutes. That means adult labor is substituted by the child labor. Substitute axiom. That means sometimes if their father or mother die, then child has to work. Or if the mother sick, child has to work. Something like that. Substitution. That is just we identify in the multiple equilibria model that discuss about the child labor. There are two axioms. One is luxury. That means children are no need to work because their families have higher income levels. But substitute axiom, mostly we can see that children have to work because their parents, sometimes children are left behind by their parents. They live with their grandparents or someone like that. Or sometimes their parents are sick. Sometimes their parents they died, something like that. Then children has to substitute instead of their parents to earn income. Main approaches to child labor policy. So child labor is an expression of poor. Child labor means we know that you can very well identify. If there is no poverty in the house, families, no need to send their children for the jobs. The child labor is an expression of poor, and it recommends and emphasizes on eliminating poverty. That means why they go for work to eliminate their poverty rather than directly expressing child labor. So they know, everyone know that child labor is not good, but there is no any other option. So the strategies should be developed to get more children into schools, including expanded school places such as new village schools and conditional cash transfer incentives to induce parents to send their children to school. Those who are poor, then those families are provided with some cash payments to send their children to school. This strategy has widespread support from many international agencies. Mostly, there are many international agencies to support this strategy and development bodies. Actually, it is probably a more effective approach than making basic education compulsory. Conditional cash transfers to the parents to send their children to the school is a very good strategy. Rather than having a policy saying that education is compulsory. Because without complementary policies, the incentives to send children to work would still remain strong. Because if they don't have money, definitely they will send their children to work if there is no other alternative to earn an income for the family. Enforcement is likely to be weak for the same reason that regulation of the informal sector has proved almost impossible in many other cases. So when we consider this child labor, actually, because there is no any other alternative, they have to do it for their survival. Not only for their survival, but also to look after sometimes their sick parents or differently able parents, something like that. Or when they live without their parents, they have to do that. Actually, in Sri Lanka, we can see that compulsory schooling. Compulsory schooling is a good idea, but it is not by itself sufficient solution to the problem of child labor. Compulsory. It is compulsory to send the children to the school. But in the practice, it is very difficult to do. So improving the quality of basic schooling and increasing accessibility are also very important. So we know that in Sri Lanka especially, it says that schooling is compulsory and sometimes the children are given assistance to at least to complete their compulsory education. So we know that children are provided with meals, children are provided with meals. Then sometimes they are provided with uniforms. So when we consider child labor, the child labor is inevitable. We cannot avoid it. It is inevitable, at least in the short run. So stress palliative measures such as regulating it to prevent abuse and to provide support service for working children. So what we need to do is, if the children are work, they should be provided with a better working environment. They should not be abused. They should be provided with support services for their education, especially. If they are working, sometimes it should be allowed the working children to work in the afternoon. Or weekends, something like that, without making interruptions to their schooling. But it is very difficult because mostly the employers don't consider those things. They just need to get the labor at a lower cost from the children. International Labour Organization set a working target to completely eliminate the worst forms of child labor by 2016. That means there are very strong labor laws for the child labor. ILO has introduced those things to the countries' labor organizations. In Sri Lanka also there are child protecting organizations, government organizations. They implement a lot of rules and regulations to provide a better environment for the children without to reduce the child labor, to eliminate the child labor. But still there is no progress in these measures. Especially when we consider the WTO and many activities in developed countries. WTO also emphasized this one, and many activities in developed countries have proposed the imposition of trade sanctions that we are not going to export products from. Sanctions against countries that permit child labor, at least banning the goods on which children work. WTO also stressed this one, not to export goods from the countries who have given the permission to use the child labor, or at least banning the goods on which children work. The approach is well intention. It worked well, but if the objective is the welfare of children, it needs to be considered carefully, because second one, if we ban the products which are produced by children, sometimes those poor children will not be get an income in the future because they will lose their job. So it need to be considered carefully, because of children cannot work in the export sector. They will almost certainly be forced to work in the informal sector. Even though they work in the export sectors, sometimes those bans are negatively affect to their income level. in the informal sector, they are mostly engaged. And when we consider those environments, they are not in a good condition. Then finally, I am not going to discuss all the things with this slide, and I am going to finally focus on this gender gap discrimination in education and higher education. So you no need to consider the other slide, just consider up to this point, the gender gap discrimination in education and health. In most of the low-income countries and middle-income countries, it is found that the less education for the young female than young male. Less education for the young female than young male, especially when we consider the Middle East countries and some Western Asian countries, we can identify that situation. Less education for young female than young male. But in Sri Lanka, that is different. Women are educated in Sri Lanka, but the employment is a problem. Their employment is low. Therefore, as when we consider this universe, therefore, it is need to close this gap. Closing the education gap is needed. This is not related to Sri Lanka actually. That is for the world, especially for some low income and low middle income countries, as I mentioned earlier, especially Middle East countries, then Western Asian countries, especially we can see this discrimination. As I mentioned earlier, when the women are educated, it will lead to higher social returns. Higher social returns, especially when we consider the child care, child nutrition, child labor, children's education, everything. We can see that high social returns with the highly educated women. When the women are educated, the productivity levels are high and the fertility rates are low. It is even in Sri Lanka, we can see that educated women are very productive, and also we can see that when the women are educated, they get married later and they get very few number of children. So the lower fertility rates. Then multiplier impact of the future generations. Multiplier impact of the future generations. Multiplier impact of the future generations. That means when women are educated, their children are very educated, and those future generation definitely will lead to a better, another group of future generations. multiplier impact of the future generations. Higher the women education, the highly educated and very healthy future generation. So it has a multiplier effect. If the women are educated, that will reduce the inadequate education of women. When women are educated, that will lead to increase the number of educated women in the future too. They complete their education from each and every aspect. There is a well-balanced education. Then women education will lead to break the vicious circle of poverty. When women are educated, they give proper education for their children and proper health facilities for their children, good habits for their children. Therefore, definitely the educated children will have proper returns on their education investment in the future. That's why your parents always try to make you well educated. Sometimes at present you may have some income problems. In order to control that, what your parents do is they try to give a proper education for you. So when we consider the Millennium Development Goals achievements, we can see that up to a certain level, there is a considerable improvement in this women education. Under MDG, the parity being approached, parity means equality, being approached in every developing region. Then consequences of gender bias. Consequences of gender bias. Economic incentives should be given to increase the women education. That means the government can implement some activities or programs to increase the level of women education. They can provide some facilities, especially for the girls. Cultural settings, especially in the Middle East countries and Western Asian countries. Their culture prohibited the women education or limited the women education. Those, in order to avoid those cultural patterns, the government should introduce some policies. Then women education also lead to missing woman mastery. Missing woman mastery. Missing woman mastery. That means it is a particular bad side of the women education. That means if a lady is educated, sometimes in today's world, we can see that they get married very old age, after their 30 years, something like that. Therefore, they don't have capacity to deliver the babies. Fertility is sometimes zero. Fertility. They don't have capacity to deliver the babies because they get married in their old age. So that lady will be missed from the society. That means she will not have a future generation. That is one way to miss a woman from the society. There is no future generation from her. And the other thing is, sometimes because of the education, a lady will not get married, From that point, that lady will be vanished from this world. After she died, there is no generation of her. That is the missing women milestone. So, women education, when we consider, it will lead to increase the family income. It will lead to increase the family income, but according to the previous researchers, it is found that family income is not always the matter to increase the quality of the education or higher income. So actually, when we consider this missing women masteries, one of the most important thing to be addressed in the today's society. Here you can see that with the achievements of the Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Goals, we can identify that gap in literacy rate between young men and women shrunk everywhere since 1985. Actually, Millennium Development Goals were set in year 2000, but starting from year 1985, we can see that there is a trend that the gap between young men and women literacy or education, it is shrinking. That means it is going to be going to be equalized. But still we can see that in the sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and Middle East and North Africa, it prevails still. So you can see that black color stands for the situation in 2016 and blue color stands for 1985 situation. But in here for the South Asia also you can see that if we consider the black difference between black color two lines, it is very small. And if you consider the same region, South Asia, blue color two lines, the difference is large here. Here and here. That means in year 1985, the situation is worse. Female are highly marginalized, but the situation has been changed in year 2016. Still, there is a large gap in sub-Saharan Africa, but it is better in 2016 than to 1985. But here you can see that East Asia and Pacific, there is a similar situation. And Latin America and Caribbean also, there is a similar situation in 2016. But here you see there is a different situation in Latin America and Caribbean in 1985. Female literacy rates are higher than the male literacy rate. In all the other cases, we can see that male literacy rates are higher than female literacy rates. So you can see that in Latin America, the situation is different. But now both are equal. So this is missing women values estimations. So you can see that Afghanistan, the missing women is very high. India, Pakistan, Sub-Saharan Africa, still there is no that much of this missing women problem. That means in Sub-Saharan Africa, still the female get married and make children. But in Afghanistan, you can see that there is a different situation. Sometimes that may be due to the prevailing wars or internal conflicts. India, Pakistan also it is high. So, so at that point, I stop the lecture and you need to consider only the things that we can discuss up to this point. Okay. Why didn't you participate for the yesterday tutorial class? What happened? Fasindu told me that there were no students yesterday. Now you will say that we participated to the forum. Is that the reason? That only related to the students from the economics department, business economics department. What happened to the others? Do you have anything to discuss with me or ask from me? Because this is the last lecture and you know that our department policy is not to upload the recordings. So you have to refer the Todaro Smith textbook or the lecture slides that I have provided to you. And if you have missed your assignment works, for that you will not get marks. Hashina, are you there? Hashina. Is that my research student?
Yes, madam.
You. From this lecture, I think you can get lot of things for your research, okay?
Okay, madam.
What about others? Vasat, are you there? No. Then Yasoda?
Yes, madam, I'm here.
You were yesterday, but you are. What happened to the tutorial class? Why didn't you inform to the sir? Ayogulu kiwi nette sir.
අපි සර්ට කිව්වා මැඩම් සර්ට දන්නේ නැහැ සර්ට මතක නැද්ද කියලා නම් සර් සති දෙකකට කලින්ම මම කිව්වා.
මට මැසේජ් එකක් ඊමේල් එකක් දාලා තිබුණා ළමයි නැහැ හිටියේ කියලා. ඒක දැක්කා. ඔයාලා නම් වැඩනේ නේද? කීයටද ටියුටෝරියල් ක්ලාස් එක තිබුණේ?
6ට මැඩම් 6 ඉඳන් 7:00 වෙනකම් වගේ තියෙනවා.
Then how I saw that Pasido was also there. So follow the lecture notes very well and get prepared well for the exam. And I am ready to give you A+. So it is your responsibility to get it. Okay? Wish you all the best for your exams.
Thank you, madam.
With whom you work for your research?
My supervisor is Madhuranga sir.
For the other students, those who are from business economics department, Vaslina is with me. Then the other girl's name, I can't remember her name. Are there any students, those who are working with me for your research? No. අර හිතේස හැම lectures එන්නේ නැහැ නේද? ඉන්නවද හිතේෂ දැන්? නෑ නේද අදත්? ඒ සාමාන්‍ය ඒෂියන් ඉකොනොමික්ස් උත් ආවේ නැහැ. Okay. So today is Poet Day and I took your time, but there was no any other alternative. So I will stop the lecture if you don't have anything to ask from me. You will get essay types questions, okay? For some time. Yes, mostly you get essay types questions. This time the paper will be different because the last time the lecturer was Professor Janak. But the thing that you need to do is you have to follow the lecture series very well. That's it. Then you can easily get A+. You are given 5 questions. Yes, 5 questions, all are compulsory. Okay, thank you very much for the participation. I will leave.
Thank you, madam.
Recording